Good evening. I am Rudy el-Khoury, Dean of the School of Architecture at the University of Miami, and I'm delighted to be hosting tonight's celebration of the Aga Khan Award for Architecture. The Aga Khan Award for Architecture was established in 1977 by His Highness Prince Karim Aga Khan, the spiritual leader of the Shia Ismaili Muslim community, and has steadfastly championed the improvement of the quality of life through the practice of architecture. Since its launch 39 years ago, over 110 projects have received the award, and more than 9,000 buildings have been documented. The award is governed by a steering committee chaired by His Highness the Aga Khan, and the winners are selected by an independent master jury. Now, 348 projects from 69 countries participated in the 13th award cycle of 2014-2016. Of these 348 entries, 19 made the shortlist and 6 were honored as winners at a ceremony held in the United Arab Emirates on November 2016. This evening, we have the opportunity to look closely at these projects and to hear their stories. This opportunity was made possible through the generosity, hard work, and meticulous planning by the Ismaili Council and its members. Our special gratitude goes out to the members of the Council present with us this evening, to Zahra Hayat Daya, the president of the Aga Khan Council for Florida of the Shia Ismaili Muslim community, and to Ismaili Council members, Marcia Soto, Communications and Publications member, and to Amin Lalani, Volunteer Resource Mobilization leader, and their incredible team. We are grateful for the inspiring gift they make to the community with this evening's presentation and exhibition. And now I'm pleased to present one of the members of the Aga Khan Award for Architecture Steering Committee, who incidentally is a much esteemed former colleague, Professor Brigitte Shim. Brigitte Shim is a principal at the Toronto-based design firm Shim-Sutcliffe Architects and a professor at the John H. Daniels Faculty of Architecture, Landscape, and Design at the University of Toronto. Brigitte, along with her partner, Howard Sutcliffe, formed the architectural design practice Shim-Sutcliffe Architects in 1994. The practice, one of the most highly regarded in North America, reflects their shared commitment to the integration and interrelated scales of architecture, landscape, interior, and industrial design. To name just one of the multiple professional accolades, I mentioned that in January 2013, Brigitte and her partner were both awarded the Order of Canada. That's the highest honor possible in Canada. And I quote, "For their contributions as architects designing sophisticated structures that represent the best of Canadian design to the world," end quote. Brigitte has lectured and participated in invited international symposia around the world. She has also served on numerous international, national, and local design juries as a tireless advocate for design excellence, including the 2007 Aga Khan Architecture Award Master Jury, and more recently on the awards steering committee. Please join me in welcoming Brigitte Shim.
So first of all, thank you. In Toronto, we call him Rodolphe el-Khoury, not Rudy, to Marcia, and really this vital Ismaili community in Miami for this wonderful invitation to join you. When I was on the jury, I wrote a piece in 2007, and I just thought I would read some of that to you. Architecture fuses together poetic ideas, inert materials, physical and social conditions. Architecture trades on its ability to touch and shape people's lives in profound and meaningful ways. Around the world, no matter how it is being practiced, architecture is a complex discipline. Whether you're a student or a practitioner, you'll probably agree. In January and June of 2007, I was honored to be one of 9 jury members invited to spend several days in an elegant boardroom in Geneva, focused on ways that built architecture impacts the Muslim world. Our attention was directed to 343 projects submitted for consideration for that year for the Aga Khan Architecture Award. Each jury member was required to do a huge amount of homework prior to arriving in Geneva. There were thick binders full of background information that was shipped to you in advance, and my eyes adjusted slowly over a period of several months. The Muslim world covers many continents and numerous climatic zones and specific regions of the world. I became intimately aware of the enormous challenges and the hopeful opportunities of building in towns and cities like Kodugo, Beirut, Addis Ababa, Singapore, Shabam, Nicosia, and Rudrapur. My experience on this jury has recalibrated my senses. And because of the Aga Khan Award, I've been inspired to remap my world. Most architecture award juries, and I have sat on countless of them in North America and Europe, bring together architects who review photographic images of built work and then select projects which reflect their collective vision of design excellence. The Aga Khan Architecture Awards brings together 5 architects, but as well historians, artists, curators, theorists. Our task was to discuss, interpret, and better understand the changing landscape of the Muslim world. In the course of our numerous jury sessions, I became aware that architects were also painters, and that curators were also poets, and that everyone around the table was a teacher. We listened and learned from the distinct voices around the table. The jury's definition of architectural excellence was constantly being challenged, redefined, and defined again. The winning projects were not easily decided. They emerged from a lateral conversation about architecture. No other architecture award program in the world sends independent reviewers to all parts of the globe to visit the jury's shortlisted projects. No other architecture award program in the world brings the same independent reviewers to the awards jury to share their firsthand observations and insights about the physical and social context of the built work. The reviewer's personal field experience enabled the jury to build a knowledge base for each and every project. This is a fundamental for what we call the vertical gathering of knowledge afforded by the Aga Khan Architecture Award. The jury was made aware of the physical data, design and construction process, cultural contribution, construction schedule, the cost, the technical development, and the social relevance of every project under consideration. The level of thoroughness is unbelievable. We discussed the design intent and the design process, as well as the design results. We understood the varying roles of the contractor, the builder, the craftsman in each project. We recognized the many types of strong individuals and client groups involved in the commissioning of work, as well as the complex nature of the design teams that are needed to realize any built project. The depth of our understanding of all of the shortlisted projects allowed us to permeate projects that emerged from our deep vertical knowledge base. How can architecture continue to play a vital role in building community throughout the Muslim world and throughout the globe? We saw many projects that suffered from adopting a borrowed language of architecture, which did not carefully serve the communities that they were in. As a counterpoint, we supported and celebrated wonderful ways of building community that derive from a deep understanding of local culture and building traditions, but simultaneously addressed the layered complexities of the modern world, this dialectic between the local and the modern. The discipline of architecture needs to nurture alternative models of practice that link committed designers directly with local people, allowing them to engage in projects that have the capacity to build and transform communities. This point is so important in architecture schools where you really need to have multiple models for how to realize good buildings. The client commissioning an architect is one model that's very prevalent in North America, but not necessarily relevant in other parts of the world. At the Central Market in Kodugo in Burkina Faso, the building of a full-size prototype of one market bay out of local compressed earth called banko demonstrated an alternative way of working with local community groups. No one could read drawings. They used the prototype to determine the construction schedule. It was used as a marketing and leasing tool, and it was also used to train 40 masons on the site. This is really a project where there was very little wood available, so these self-supporting vaults were really essential. And in a way, this full-size prototype was a vehicle for communicating ideas, and it allowed the Swiss architects and engineers working for an international development agency to build a truly participatory process involving the entire local community. The market created a home and a crucial piece of town infrastructure, a noble building for meeting and exchange that has transformed the lives of hundreds of people. The 600 women who used the market stalls, the masons licensed during the construction, and in a way, the understanding of architecture truly as a creative act. A new rural school in Bangladesh comes out of a young woman's understanding of the local community after she spent a year volunteering in the village. She combined her formal training as an architect with her commitment to community. The knowledge transfer that takes place between committed designers and a specific community really allows exemplary buildings to emerge. The final result of their collective effort is a joyous, sustainable building that serves its community well. At no time in human history has the potential for architecture to shape our world been greater than today. The winners of the Aga Khan Architecture Awards are exemplary projects in their complexity. And each and every one of them has shown us a way to give us a chance for the human spirit to transform the world around us. So in a way, one of the most valuable lessons has to do with the way that architects can truly engage with the Muslim world and the global world even before they start to design. In a way, for me, the next cycle I was invited to be a field reviewer, which is maybe better than being on the jury. And I was able to go out in the field and produce these enormous reports, but also talk to many people and to really understand the projects in the field. I'm really delighted to be here in warm and sunny Miami, and that this is the current cycle that you're going to see and the exhibition next door reflects has resulted in 6 truly exemplary projects. Each one, as Rodolphe said, is the result of a very long journey. The videos that you're going to see are truly powerful tools. They've been produced by the Aga Khan Architecture Award. They send filmmakers to each of the 19 shortlisted projects. The jury is able to see this work. And what's really interesting is that the videos capture so much of the context, the interviews in person with the users, and so hopefully you'll really get a sense of these 6 exemplary projects, and then we'll have a discussion right after. So thank you so much.
Architecture, I say it's a way of life.
I think architecture is a social act.
That buildings, for me, are living beings. They breathe, they have light, they have a soul of their own.
Every 3 years since 1977, the Aga Khan Award for Architecture has recognized architects for projects which stand out not only for their aesthetic qualities, but as well for their social and environmental attributes. This year, a master jury shortlisted 19 projects, and the winners of the 13th triennial cycle of the award will be announced in the autumn. Over nearly 40 years, over 8,000 projects have been documented, with 110 to date receiving the award. Amongst the 2016 candidates are a floating school in Nigeria,
I decided this was a great place to learn how they built, how they achieved so much with so little.
A prestigious tower in Doha.
We sometimes forget that architecture is an art. It's a pity, especially at a time when we build the most. It's only of interest if it remains art. Otherwise, it's all pretty awful.
An academy for nature and conservation in Jordan.
I don't like that architecture becomes art or sculpture. And I don't like that architecture celebrates itself.
A bridge in Tehran.
I think what matters the most is to understand what do people really need, both psychologically and physically.
And an NGO center in Bangladesh.
We touch as many lives and in as much ways that we can through our buildings, which are really nothing. But at the end of it all, it does have the potential to inspire people to do perhaps more.
The buildings, for me, are living beings. They breathe, they have a soul of their own, and they age.
The Beater Rauf Mosque in Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, is unlike any other. It's the work of architect Marina Tabassum.
I tried to get rid of the symbolic elements in a mosque is because I wanted to, so that this is not only used as a space for prayer, but also for other activities, social, communal activities, that it can encourage that to happen. The fact that it doesn't look like a mosque initially was a barrier. Where's the dome? Where's the minaret? And then, of course, we had to go through the process of telling them that, you know, you don't need a minaret or a dome to make it a mosque. This is the prayer hall. This is the main space of the whole mosque. As you can see, this space was perceived as a pavilion. It is on 8 columns on 8 sides and then converges. So this is where you can see the entrance court. You see the light and the breeze coming in through those walls. It's all naturally ventilated, perforated brickwork, and interestingly, this whole brickwork is load-bearing.
I think this is an unique architecture because in Bangladesh you hardly find environmental friendly mosque. You see the lights, the air circulations, the layout of the mosque.
I've always been very interested in spirituality as an element in architecture. So you have to enter into a mosque, leave behind your daily worries and and stresses. So it's a kind of a labyrinth that you enter through, and as you walk along into the prayer hall, you leave behind all those things and you sort of try to concentrate. So the space is designed in a way that it does that.
It's certainly unusual to find a woman architect both designing and constructing a mosque.
First and foremost, I don't see myself as a woman in that sense when I'm doing my projects. I'm an architect, and that whole persona as a female somehow vanishes when I'm into my work.
I always say man makes his marks in life. Man builds and leaves his mark in the landscape.
Architect Kashif Chowdhury is the designer of the Friendship Centre in Bangladesh.
Friendship is a non-governmental organization who work with some of the poorest of poor in this part of the world. They wanted a kind of a training meeting center for their various projects in healthcare, education. So we did this project for them.
Kashaf Chowdhury drew his inspiration from the Buddhist monastery of Mahastan.
The most guiding inspiration was the ruins of Buddhist monasteries and settlements from 3rd century BC onwards, which are not very far away from here. In Mahastan, for example, you see the similar kind of handmade bricks. These are beautiful materials in the sense they're handmade. It has the imperfections that give it the texture. And it was very important for me to relate to 3,000 years of history and archaeology. So the Friendship Center is essentially arranged in 2 blocks. The residential block, which has the dormitories and the staff quarters and the dining pavilion. On the other side is the training pavilion, where people sit on the floor for various kinds of training programs, including theater. So Friendship organizes theaters which really deal with things like child marriage, women empowerment. So it's difficult to get these messages through to the people. They're being quite illiterate.
During the rainy season that lasts for 6 months, temperatures can vary between 25 to 35 degrees Celsius.
So one of the ideas was to have broken forms and pavilions, open spaces, because then we could have the natural ventilation. And in addition, we have the green roof on the top, which is really helping as a thermal mass, reducing the solar heat. The result is that we can avoid the use of air conditioning by using cross ventilation. It's a good time to come back to that point where we look at architecture not just as art, but really as responding to the context or to the people for whom we built.
I always think that the children's life under the tree in the old neighborhoods, it can create interesting memories.
In Beijing, the tendency is to construct new buildings instead of restoring old neighborhoods. The architect Zhang Ke has gone against the flow of this trend.
Families, they lived here for hundreds of years. They're all local. And then in the past 5 years, the government spending time and funding to relocate them to 100 kilometers away into towers. And then our idea is possible by redesign, reuse, repair, and renovate these structures.
The government proposed to Zhang Ke to put his ideas into practice in the Dashila neighborhood near Tiananmen Square.
They give us this courtyard to see maybe you can propose what this could be renewed, renovated for the community. We got some recycled bricks to build the little structures, the little art space, and the little service kitchen. And we think that it will be good for the community that we introduce a children's library. Here comes the library. And of course, this part is the children's library part. And this is the multifunction space, so they can show movies. And this is the room. Mr. Wang is the paper cut artist, and he teaches children paper cut.
It's fine. It's pretty good. This spot used to be full of rubbish. Now look at it. Children are coming here to play.
Large-scale development is really threatening the old part of the city. And I think to have something small scale, to do it more subtly for the old city renewal is an interesting thing for the municipality.
This area is one of the areas in Copenhagen with the highest crime rate, or maybe even in entire Denmark. It felt very unsecure.
To make the Nørrebro neighbourhood safer, the City Hall of Copenhagen decided to create a big public park. Architect Nanna Gilto Müller and artist Rasmus Nielsen were in charge of the project.
In our very first walk through the area, we could see that there was a big diversity in the people living in the neighborhood. We found that it was around 60 different nations living in the area.
And rather seeing the diversity as a problem, we wanted to see it as a resource. So basically that in the park there would be elements from as many countries of the people living here through objects and stories.
The golden one is a playground from India, and the elephant slide is from Chernobyl. And the red benches over there are kind of a double bench from Switzerland. And also one of our favorites is the Moroccan fountain, where parents often sit and meet and talk while the kids are playing.
The ideas of the park was to make use of dreams that could kind of materialize into things. We divided the area in like 3 parts.
All 3 areas, they are very different. The red square is mainly for skaters. The black square is more classical square, where the locals are hanging out and kids are playing. And then the green park is more for exercise and more bigger sports activities. It's pretty easy to see today that all these different activities, they make people meet. And me, that's one of the greatest things, to see that people actually meet in the area.
We wanted to create a public space where people from a very diverse sort of backgrounds would sort of feel at home.
Our motto, yes is more. It's very much about not saying no to things, saying yes.
The very first thing that came to my mind was that the bridge can be a place to stay, not a place to pass.
Iranian architect Leyla Aragian is the designer of the Tabiat pedestrian bridge in Tehran.
So in the beginning, it was only a bridge that was supposed to connect one park to the other, but after it's opened, it has become a place for people to stay on it, so they just come here to be on the bridge. The bridge is in 2 continuous levels, and on top of the columns, it becomes 3 levels, and all the levels are connected by ramps and by stairs, and there are seating areas, and there are restaurants on the lower level.
This metal bridge has connected 2 sides of nature. Even though it's full of steel, I don't feel that I'm walking in a space made of steel. I feel like I'm walking in a forest.
So, this is my favorite spot on the bridge, and I liked it always, even during the design. It is kind of defined with the green space on the side and the opening on the other side and the handrail. And yeah, I've seen that usually couples sit here.
We have some 50 to 60% of the population of young people. They're obliging authorities, the government, and all the establishment to change and to move towards something more modern and more contemporary.
This bridge is the result of a competition between approximately 16 Iranian companies experienced in making bridges. Ms. Leyla Aragian's design won the competition, and it's been constructed most effectively.
The Tabiat pedestrian bridge opened in 2014 and was visited by around 4 million people in its first year.
In
I like this bridge very much. It gives me positive energy, and every time I feel low, I come here to get re-energized.
When I design, before thinking about the form of a project, I think what matters the most is to understand what do people really need, both psychologically and physically, and these are very basic.
It is the most modern and dramatic building on campus, and I think that's a sign of maturity.
The Issam Fares Institute in the American University of Beirut, Lebanon, is a creation of architect Zaha Hadid.
The building is wildly at odds with its surroundings. Yes, it's completely out of character with all the other buildings, but it's not crazily wild. It's certainly innovative and dramatic, and I like that very much. I like the fact that it creates controversy. It's really quite a conversation piece.
Zaha Hadid's works of art have marked 20th and 21st century architecture. Here in the American University of Beirut, her alma mater, she built the Issam Fares Institute. Her partner, Salim Jalil, supervised the project.
We believe that this project fits its context because it offers what is not missing, what is basically somehow missing. 21st century architecture has to influence its own age.
The whole building was conceived as to be a very heavy building or a very present building on the outside, but on the inside, the whole thing is transparent, which reflects the idea of a think tank. A think tank is always transparent, it's all full of ideas and exchange.
We had to deal with the cypress trees. We could not touch them. That's why we introduced that ramp in between these two rows of trees. The 21-meter cantilever, it's not an ego thing. It's like an umbrella which provides a cover or shade, and it becomes a social space. To me, the whole building is a surprise in itself because it makes you discover. It doesn't really tell you what it is, but it allows you to discover and to find out and to learn.
It's not simply a building that is providing a space, but also it gives you the opportunity to think.
Brigitte, I know you are a tireless advocate of architecture. You participate on every single board, design review, at least in Toronto. You're an engaged architect, and you have been part of many award programs. But I know that for some reason you are particularly passionate about the Aga Khan Award for Architecture. Somehow it pushes all your buttons. I'd like to know why. What is it about this award that gets you so passionate?
I would say many things. First of all, I feel that, as I mentioned during the end of my talk, there are many ways to realize architecture, and that the North American model of a client commissioning an architect is definitely one model. And I would say the building by Zaha Hadid in this group of 6, it operates in that manner. The kind of architect is selected, maybe by a competition, maybe just selected because of her relationship to the campus, and is asked to design a building. But when you look at things like the mosque by Marina Tabasa, she's not only the architect, but the constructor of the project. Her grandmother donated the land for the mosque, and so she was really following the kind of wishes of her grandmother, so she's both patron, architect, and constructor. When you look at things like the kind of bridge by Layla, it was actually a design-build project. So the designer is also the constructor to realize a very important piece of public infrastructure, and the idea that infrastructure can also be a public space, a social space. So in a way, I feel like the kind of definitions that are very rigid within a North American context about what is an architect, what is a landscape architect, what is an interior designer, you throw it out the window and you reconstruct it in really different ways. The examples that I gave in the cycle that I was on is where, in the town in Burkina Faso, they had very little wood. And so they used this self-supporting arch. They built one huge prototype, and everyone came and looked at it. They figured out how long it took to build. They used it as their leasing sort of marketing tool to sell the stalls in the market. So in a way, architecture can actually be realized in so many different ways. And I feel that we need to think about other models for how to do this in North America, because I feel that there are different kinds of engagement. We have many big problems and issues that we need to solve, and architecture can very much be part of the solution to that.
So are you saying that the award, the way it is set up, and the jury that there is a deliberate, actually, search for these kinds of alternative models, that the jury is actually teasing out deliberately this potential in the work that they are looking at?
I think the jury doesn't invent the projects. Right. They only judge from what is there. So what I'm saying is that these different ways of, alternate ways of realizing architecture exist globally around the world. In North America, we just don't see them because it's just not part of the professional way that we operate.
Right. Also, I remember that we were discussing the award on the phone, and you said something which struck me. You said, I quote, you said, the Aga Khan Award for Architecture is not a beauty contest.
It's not a beauty contest.
So can you elaborate a bit on this?
Well, like when you look at most architects, so if you're sitting on a jury, I've been on Swiss competitions, North American competitions, you end up looking at usually now you do a PowerPoint presentation. Before it would be printed out panels of the projects. You look at them as through the eyes of the photographer who shot the project for the architect. Many cases they show no context. You just see the building as an object. So what was so great about the videos is that you got to feel the place that the building was in, the messiness, the kind of dustiness of the place. Buildings are not in isolation. They really are part of a social fabric and a physical fabric. And so in a way, to be able to understand this kind of context is what the Aga Khan Award does. It provides you with all this information and detail, whereas the beauty contest is really the image of the building itself. I was just on the jury for the International High-Rise Award done by the German Architecture Museum. And we looked at 30 projects that had to be built, and each one was these very tall panels. We sat in a boardroom of a bank in Frankfurt, and we spent the entire day looking at, these big glossy pictures of high-rise buildings. So that's the kind of norm for architecture juries, and the Aga Khan Award, no other jury sends people out into the field. So this year they had to go to 19 different places, from Jordan to Iran, and people went there and met with the users. They said, why is the building like this? Does it really work? Does it not work? Then those field reviewers get flown to Geneva. The jury interrogates them. Does this really work? What's really going on here? What's happening over here? So you really understand. So the jury does not get to travel to all these places, but the field reviewers go and collectively come back to the jury. So the level of thoroughness and really understanding, does it really serve the people that it's supposed to serve? How does it measure up to other things that are in the area? Is a really important question that most of these other architecture competitions never ask. And so I feel that that's really a whole other level of understanding how the users and society actually embraces these projects. And I think that sometimes it can look beautiful, but maybe it doesn't serve the people that it's supposed to.
Now, when you look at the recent awards in the West, like the Pritzker Prize, it seems like they're going in this direction. Do you think that they've been looking at the Aga Khan Awards? Do you think that the award has had an influence? Can you talk about the status of the award internationally and the influence it has on actually shaping the current discussion?
So I guess when I went to architecture school, I actually would, every 3 years, in probably a magazine called Miramar, which doesn't exist anymore, or you'd see in some of the journals, once every 3 years, you would see a kind of page of projects that were totally different from anything you've normally seen. The early projects were a lot of restoration of historic cities, sometimes new buildings in there. And so there were these projects that would appear once every 3 years, and then you wouldn't see anything for another 3 years. I would say what's interesting is the persistence and the ongoing commitment to the award program by His Highness has really, I would say, over the kind of 40 years, so we're 39 years, so next year will be 40 years. So over a 40-year period, I would say it's shifted the conversation. So many of the values and the issues that have arisen from these awards, award-winning projects, are part of a bigger conversation about architecture. In May, I organized an event at the museum in Toronto, the Aga Khan Museum, announcing the 19 shortlisted projects for this cycle. And we had a panel discussion like this after the award, after the video presentations. And George Baird, who is one of our colleagues in Toronto, was saying that winners of the Pritzker Prize, like Shigeru Ban and Alejandro Aravena, might not have actually received an award like that without the Aga Khan Award changing the conversation about architecture, really addressing a range of issues and social concerns that have been there, but maybe not at the forefront of the conversation, with issues of formalism and object-related questions being more important than the social dimension of architecture. So in a way, I would say what's interesting about this range of projects that you just saw is that the social concerns are definitely there, but design is also equally important. And the two are actually there side by side, and it's not one over the other. It's not just a nice feel-good project that doesn't have design agendas, that what you're seeing are really interesting projects where we're redefining what the role of the architect is. And we're rethinking what is sustainability, through something like the Children's Library. Recycle, reuse, reconfigure, and not throw away. So I would say that I think that what's so exciting is that there are really interesting living examples. And what's so great for architecture students, given that we're in an architecture school, is that the website is amazing. So the website and the kind of cumulative archive just becomes an enormous resource for anyone to look at. You can go 10 years, 20 years back, and you can see the winning projects. And it's pretty impressive to be able to understand the breadth of winners over such a long time.
Right. Now, I was in that library. I visited it, and I took pictures, which I was actually tempted to show, because actually it was very much like alive, with children running up those steps and jumping. It's a nightmare for the codes, the code violations in North America. But the architect, the local architect in Beijing, who was showing me around, said she was a bit puzzled because she didn't understand why this was a Aga Khan award, because in her mind the Aga Khan award is given to a project that has an overt connection to the Islamic culture. So I think I'd like you to clarify this misunderstanding.
So when I was on the jury, we actually gave an award to a project in Singapore, and it created a huge controversy. Is Singapore part of the Muslim world? Is it not part of the Muslim world? It was actually a tower, a residential tower, done by a great firm called Woha. And what they did is it was a very, they had looked at what is called a monsoon window, which is a kind of very vernacular window used in Sri Lanka so that you can actually have horizontal ventilation. So in the middle of a typhoon, you can actually get natural ventilation through your house. And they actually did a version of this for a high-rise building. And the conversation was that density is important, vertical cities are the future, and we need really great models to look at, not just in the Muslim world, but globally, that we can see as exemplary projects for how to actually think about the kind of density that we need to address as a society. So in a way, that's one example of a kind of a way that the award is actually looking forward. A few cycles ago, there was a bridge project, which was actually in southern China. And it's actually it's a school that literally links two different villages together. So it's both a school building and a bridge. So it's called the Bridge School. And it created a huge debate and controversy because it was in China, and is China part of the Muslim world? What is the percentage of Muslim practicing people in China? And so in a way, I would say there has become a slightly expanded definition of the award, and that it is looking at solutions that work for the Islamic world, but also work for the larger global community at the same time. And I think that's been a result of huge amounts of conversation from different juries. And I think that it's actually a really, this broadened definition really makes the award even more relevant and more contemporary.
Mm-hmm. So it is the brand is so that not so much anymore about the Islamic culture, but it's more about, it's an award associated with the developing world. It's an award associated with socially minded architecture. It's an award that is associated with alternatives to the established Western models.
And I guess I would probably say that we think of the first world and the kind of third world, and I would say that the kind of developing world has a lot to teach the first world. Right. I would say it's not a one-way street. And I would say that many of the ways that these projects are realized actually could be the solution to a lot of the issues that we have within North America. Because I feel that the kind of traditional, I'm an architect, dotted line, I'm a landscape architect, and you can see it on the drawings, you can see it in the built world that we're in, doesn't necessarily address the problems that we have. And so I think we need to be redefining our boundaries and rethinking how we actually realize projects. And so I feel like the models that we have, and there's not one model, what you've seen are 6 totally different models of how to realize this. And that for me is what is so exciting and what is so dynamic, and for architecture students so inspiring. There's no one way to do anything. But in a way, in each of the different models, there become lessons that I think are very valid and very relevant. And what you hear through the videos are the voices of the authors. What's really exciting for me is that of the 6 projects, 3 of them have been led by amazing female architects. And they're not just projects by women architects, they're great projects. And the people leading them happen to be female architects. And it's really about time, but so exciting and inspiring to see. And I've met, sort of at the awards ceremony, some of Layla and Marina, totally impressive architects in their own right. And I think that they're really trying to change the communities that they're in a very positive way.
Okay. Maybe we could have some questions from the audience.
Yes. Did you know, and did you always go into it knowing that you wanted to create or
or emphasize buildings that had social impact and community impact? Or was that something that you learned about recently?
So the question is, how did you know you wanted to become an architect? Does anyone ever really know? I think I had actually originally started off in fine art, but I actually got accepted to an architecture school. And the fine arts school said that they would give me a deferral if I wanted to do something else for a year. So I said, I'll just try it for a year. And if I don't like it, I'll go back to the other school. And I sort of stuck around, and it was infinitely complex and challenging. And I think I would probably be bored if it wasn't that challenging. It's sort of like playing three-dimensional chess all the time. And I think that as the world becomes more complex, building within it becomes even more challenging. And that part of it is, it's easy to build buildings. I would say to build things with meaning that have resonance to a society is actually much more difficult. And I think what's interesting to see these projects is that they actually are both very functional, very pragmatic, very sort of, they do all kinds of very down-to-earth things, but they also speak at a much higher level at the same time. And I think the kind of, the sort of ability to both address, drainage and site infrastructure, and yet be a piece of architecture is a very difficult and challenging thing. So you're actually seeing a range of projects that are very much able to use bricks and pieces of metal and sort of very ordinary things to speak about very lofty and aspirational ideas, and that's pretty powerful.
So firstly, thank you for sharing these wonderful projects with us this evening. I'm very interested in the last part of your conversation when you were talking about how, in fact, architectural practice in third world countries is open to different ways of collaboration, and how these women have had experiences in leading these projects in these locations, perhaps precisely because there is that flexibility. And those of us that have worked in third world countries know exactly what a wonderful experience that can be. So what's missing? Why can't we seem to translate those methods of collaboration and flexibility into our systems in this country as readily?
You want to take that one?
This is for you.
Well, I mean, I think that we're very professional. So in the issue of profession, you get, your knuckles get rapped if you call yourself an architect when you're not a registered architect. There are a whole set of regulations, and they're very valid. They relate to liability and insurance and health and public safety. All of those things are very much part of a North American, system. I think that to kind of cross boundaries is sometimes challenging within something that's actually quite rigid. And so it's interesting, I met many like Swiss architects who work for NGOs in Africa, get to do things that Swiss architects in Switzerland actually don't get to do because, again, of the regulatory frameworks that they operate within. So I think that schools of architecture are really wonderful laboratories. So things like the design build projects that you guys do at the University of Miami and many architecture schools do in other places. The Rural Studio happens in Alabama, set up by Sam Mockbee, where they work in some of the poorest areas in all of America. The students actually build different projects, so they both design them and build them for the users of those communities. So there are these models that are out there, they're just few and far between. And they really go against the system and require the effort of many, many people. So it becomes an act of will to kind of maintain these kinds of programs within a North American context.
Do you have any baseline criteria?
So I think that what's interesting about it is it's quite dynamic. So what happens so the jury meets in January, once every 3 years. So they all assemble in this beautiful boardroom that you saw glimpses of in Geneva. The steering committee also comes as well. And the steering committee gets to see all the projects in advance. And in a way, we actually put together a brief that is in effect a framework or a lens for the jury to use. They can disregard it completely if they want to, or they can, it's really just a tool to help them to think about certain issues that link or combine the projects. And so the jury does, the steering committee sets the kind of agenda, the jury looks at all the projects, and then in June, when the jury has finished their deliberation, so in between, they send people to all these projects, 19 projects around the world, they come back, and then the jury meets, and the jury, in effect, presents the findings or the 6 winning projects back to the steering committee and His Highness. So it's a fairly formal process, but it's actually one where the jury then has to articulate why or what links or ties these projects together. And it doesn't mean that every project has to relate to every other project, but what happens is that it becomes a kind of glimpse or a snapshot of relevant projects that are operating within the world itself over this 3-year period. And that what you see is over the kind of cycles of the awards, every 3 years, you actually get an amazing mosaic and understanding of what the issues and agendas that are most relevant are. And in a way, it allows us to have a really great conversation about what is really going on globally in terms of the built world and our environment. For example, on the cycle that I was on, we were looking for great landscape projects because we felt that it was such an important part of the kind of world that we live in, and so underrepresented in the Aga Khan Architecture Awards. There were ones, they take so long. They require so much time to become mature. So one of the projects was the Wadi Hanifa, which was this very large water reclamation project going through the city of Riyadh. And so we saw this and we discussed it, debated about it, but we could not give it an award because it was sort of like 3/4 finished and sort of there, but not fully. So the next cycle, I nominated it as an Aga Khan Award-winning project, but I also told the architects and the landscape architects, you need way better pictures, you need better documentation, I want really great maps that are full of color that explain the before and the after. And they resubmitted it, and it won an Aga Khan Award. And in a way, it was really important because it was really something that was the kind of place for much of the garbage of Riyadh. And now it's this beautiful way to actually clean the water. It has become a place where people gather. And it's such an amazing example, but a huge piece of public infrastructure. It took 2 decades to realize, enormous effort. And in a way, is a kind of interesting example of how long sometimes projects take to be realized. So I would say the agenda for the award keeps changing and evolving. When I was on the award, His Highness said, why are there no industrial buildings, factories? Because people in the developing world spend so much of their time in factory buildings. And it was a really big issue, but in our cycle, there were no factory buildings. So the jury can't invent a project, they can only premiate a project. But then I would say over the next cycle, there was a project, a garment factory in Turkey that was a beautiful project. It won an Aga Khan Award. And in a way, it becomes an exemplary for what a factory can be. And so I would say that it's not any one cycle, but over many cycles, there become really wonderful models that you can look at and understand how you can make a better society, how you can make better cities, and that the projects themselves actually become really great examples for us to look at. They're not the answer for everything, but they just become, good models to be able to learn lessons from.
Thank you.
I can imagine, that being a jury member for a competition for the same project, it could be complex. And I can imagine how the Aga Khan Award competition is very complex in terms of being different culture, different countries, different activity, different function, whatever. I could not understand how Zaha Hadid project fits into the selection, because most of them, it seems that they serve the community and serve the purpose, of the community and the need of community. But in spite of the fact that, it's a piece of art, building and project, can you elaborate more a little bit about how does it fit into the selection?
So if you didn't hear, the question was about the Zaha Hadid project and how it fits within the kind of grouping of the jury. So I was not on the jury, so I was just on the steering committee. But how I understand from the jury conversation is that they really felt that that it was a dynamic completion of a historic courtyard, and that these existing cypress trees, the grove of trees, was actually the DNA of the entire project. It didn't start from the building, it actually started from the trees that became the kind of, to preserve the trees, they created all these ramps that actually became the entry and access point of the building. So the idea that it was kind of filling this incomplete sort of courtyard and using a kind of modern building to do that was part of the kind of discussion. But beyond that, I'm not able to kind of really answer the kind of bigger question. But I think that was really the way that it was presented by the jury to the steering committee.
The jury is not just made up of architects. That would be my first question. Second, I know there's a cash prize of $1 million. So if you can elaborate on that, and if there are any parameters as to where the funds go.
So two really great questions. One is that the jury is not, so there are 5 architects on the jury, usually from all around the world. And then in different juries have different jury members. So the other 4 jury members are definitely not architects. In our case, it was Homi Bhabha, it was amazing. We had a curator, an art curator, we had an artist, we had a historian. And so in a way, it was so challenging because the architects were not just talking to each other, but they had to talk to the other people and it had to convince them as to what they saw in these buildings. And the historians and the theorists saw other things in other buildings. So that meant for a really amazing conversation. When you look at the beauty contest version of the jury, it's all architects, and they can all talk this coded language to each other, and they're very happy to do so. And yet, when they're non-architects, you have to actually pull things apart. You have to really explain what you're talking about and really make it clear. And there's no jargon, there's no sort of architecture speak. And in a way, it's a really great way to kind of have a really wonderful lateral conversation throughout the jury. So I think that's really, really important. The cash prize is a really interesting part. It's the largest architecture prize in the world. So if you have 6 projects, the overall amount is divided by each of the 6 projects. But what also happens is that the jury can actually determine within that portion of the award who gets what. So in the example of the market in Burkina Faso, we actually gave part of the award to the 40 masons that actually built the building, in addition to the Swiss NGO, the local architectural team, and the local community leaders that actually realized the project. And so in a way, you're actually able to, through the kind of, and what ends up happening, it's not a huge amount by the time you divide it up, but it's actually an acknowledgement and a level of respect for the contribution of all those people in the project. One of the projects that on my cycle, was actually a zone in the walled city of Nicosia, and it actually required 2 mayors to come together in a warring city, and they had actually agreed on this zone for tourism. And they both came to the award, and they actually ended up both receiving, so we actually were able to divide the award between both mayors and both teams on both sides of a kind of divided line. And so the ability to actually, the jury's ability to actually determine the apportioning of the cash prize, again, is an understanding that it's not just the architect that realizes the building all on its own, but a very large group of people that are necessary to realize a building. And that ability to recognize and acknowledge, I think, is a very special thing. And so you've seen at award ceremonies a lot of people coming up to receive an award. What they've also done, which is really amazing, the group in Geneva, is that they've also had ceremonies in the villages themselves or in the actual location of the buildings. So in the example that I showed in my slide presentation of the school in Rudrapur, it's a village with mud buildings, but this is the only two-story building made of both loam, which is the kind of mud walls, and bamboo. And I think that they didn't really get it. They said, why are all these people coming to our village and what's so important? And it made them appreciate what was actually in their own backyard. It made them actually understand what they had and appreciate what was already there. So I feel like the work of the award is a slow build. It's in its 39th year, but the ripple and the effect is actually growing. And I feel that it's really shifted a conversation that has been seen as the other world. The developing world happens over here and we're here. And I feel like, it's not a one-way street. And the idea that we can actually learn both ways is actually really the important message, and that the kind of importance of the award, I feel, only grows because its conversation that it's had from its very beginning and the values embedded in it actually become global values, and that we need to think about great architecture for sure, amazing design, but also that we need to actually embed those amazing designs in community. And I think they're not mutually exclusive. So it doesn't have to be a feel-good project or super uber architecture. They can actually come together in a really powerful way. And when they do, I would say architecture serves its community well.
I would like to invite Zahra Hayat Daya, the president of the Aga Khan Council for Florida, to make some concluding remarks, please.
You have joined us here today for the Aga Khan Award for Architecture presentation and the exhibition in this incredibly stunning building. Thank you very much for having us here. I hope this evening has further developed our understanding that architecture has the capacity to transform the quality of human existence as it dares to commit to the spirit of pluralism and a respect for diversity. A set of values the Aga Khan Award for Architecture is deeply embedded in and seeks for in all of its nominated projects. The award is part of the work of the Aga Khan Development Network, a private, international, and non-denominational organization founded by His Highness the Aga Khan to improve the quality of life of the people in impoverished parts of the world with a holistic approach to their social, economic, and cultural needs. His Highness the Aga Khan is the 49th hereditary Imam, spiritual leader of the Shia Ismaili Muslims, and a direct descendant of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The Ismaili Muslim community to which we belong includes people from diverse cultural traditions residing in over 25 countries. The Ismailis have a 1,400-year tradition of Shia values that are expressed through a commitment to a search for knowledge, generously sharing of one's time, intellectual, and material resources to improve the quality of life with those whom we live with. At the award ceremony on the 12th cycle in 2013 in Lisbon, Portugal, His Highness emphasized, and I quote, "It was on the Iberian Peninsula, of course, that one of history's great pluralistic societies flourished for several centuries, a home for Christians and Jewish people that was also part of Islamic empire. Portugal has for many ages nourished a profound sense of what we might call world awareness. It was in that same spirit of world awareness that this award was founded, and it is in that spirit that it is presented tonight, unquote. As we explore the projects of the exhibition, let's observe how each one embraces the cultural community within the related Muslim society while also addressing the aspirations of rapidly changing demographics. How are they mirroring the diversity of human experiences and differences in local environments? How are they honoring the inherited traditions while also engaging with new social perplexities and new technological possibilities? The award itself is the tip of the iceberg. It was established by His Highness to take up these very questions through an array of seminars, exhibitions, and publications. It is heartwarming to witness contributions by so many architects, philosophers, artists, historians, and other professionals from diverse faiths and cultures who've helped to shape and reshape the 13 award cycles thus far. Ladies and gentlemen, it is equally heartwarming to have your presence here, and our greatest gratitude goes out to each and every one of you to support this exhibition. We would also like to extend our gratitude to Dean Rudolph el-Khoury and the faculty and staff at the School of the Architecture, just to name a few people who have played a pivotal role: Sylvia Alvarez, Lisa Merritt, and Abid Kure. We would also like to thank the architecture students who will tonight guide us through this exhibition, making it a very enlightening experience for us all. And last but not least, Brigitte Shim, thank you for joining us and making your way here all the way from Toronto. It is truly a special honor to have you with us tonight. Thank you very much to all of you for being here, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.